Parshas Vayeira. This week's Parsha has a very interesting and perhaps even curious dialogue between Sara and Avraham and an angel, a Malach Hashem. We're looking at the Psukim, Perek Yud Ches, starting Pasuk Test and several paragraphs after that. This is Genesis 18:9. We start there. One of the questions we're going to ask is, it appears that Sara, Imenu, gets called out for behavior which is similar, if not identical, to that of Avraham Avinu, and he doesn't get criticized at all. So let's look at this. In Pasuk Test, that's verse 9, says, this is right after the three ostensibly men, turns out to be angels, have visited Avraham, and Avraham has fed them and has hosted them, etc. And then they say, Vayomer love, so they said to him, where's your wife, Sarah? She's in the tent. Okay. So this conversation begins with Avraham, but we establish that Sara is around, and in fact later we'll find out that she's able to listen. So he gives now this malach, this angel gives his prophecy or his promise on behalf of the Almighty. He says, Vayomer shova shuvelecha kais chaya, I'll be back again, this time, same time next year. V'nei bein l'Sara ishtecha, and your wife Sarah will have a son. The Sara shoma'as pesach ha'oel v'acharav. And Sarah hears this. She hears it from the doorway of the tent, which is behind him. Now, what's their status? What's the nature of this prophecy? Prophecy is wild. Why? So the verse tells us, this is now Pasuk Yud Aleph, that's verse 11. V'Avraham v'Sara zikenim bo'im bayomim. Both Avraham and Sarah were old. They were quite old. Chadal yos l'Sara arach chanashim. And Sarah no longer was in the way of women. In other words, she wasn't fertile. Evidently, she was not having her period. So what was Sarah's response? Because she heard, this is the next verse, Vatitzchak Sara b'kirba lemor. So Sarah hears, and, well, that's not the translation. It says Vatitzchak Sara b'kirba lemor. And Sarah laughed internally, inside herself, perhaps in her mind, saying, Acharei velosi hoysaliadna. After I am worn out, I will have either, some say rejuvenation, some say it means she'll return to having her menstrual cycle, but it means that she will regain her youth, as it were. Vadoni zakein. And my husband is old, meaning we're both out of, we're retired. We're no longer capable of having children. So she laughs in her mind. Vayomer Hashem el Avram, and Hashem says to Avram, and according to some commentaries, this is still the Malach speaking in the name of God, but it's a divine message. Lama ze tzachaka Sara. Why did Sarah laugh? Lemor ha'afum nam eled vanizakati. Am I indeed going to give birth and I am old? Now we note that she leaves out the second element of wonder, which is in the previous verse, which says which says vadonizokain, and my husband is old. And the commentaries explain that this is out of deference to Avram, that when the Almighty is recapitulating or recasting Sarah's objection, if you will, or her wonder at this, it characterizes only her first statement, which is, I'm postmenopausal. This isn't good. How is this going to happen? Meaning, I'm old. And it leaves out of deference, out of shalom, to preserve peace, if you will, this criticism or observation of, perhaps, of Abraham's inability to have children. We've talked about that earlier. We're not going to dwell on that now, just that the Gemara says that it is permissible to change the way you would normally say something in order to preserve peace. It doesn't mean you're allowed to lie, but it means you're allowed to change things. Okay. So then, this messenger of God continues, is God incapable of anything? Is there anything that God is not capable of doing? So, I'll be back next year. Sarah has a child. This gets really curious. And Sara denies this. And she says, I did not laugh. Kireya, because she was afraid. Vayomer, and he responded, Lo, you laughed. This is wild. And then that's the end of the story. It says, and then the men got up and left. So the question is here, first of all, as we mentioned, why does Sara get called out for this behavior? Whereas in the previous chapter, in Yud Zayin, that's 17:17, the verse says, Avram gets the same nevuah, the same prophecy, similar, same effect. Vayipol Avraham al panav, and Abraham fell on his face. Vayitzchak, and he laughed. Vayomer b'libo, and he said in his heart, in his mind, Halaben mea shana teled, ve'im Sara kavash tishim shana teled. Is a 100-year-old man going to have a child? And is a 90-year-old woman going to give birth? How is this going to work? So why is he called out? She's called out and he's not. And secondly, why did Sara deny it? The verse says that she laughed. She laughed in her heart, in her mind, bikirba, inside. Why does she deny it? Now, I've seen some translations that say that she lied, and I think that's totally inappropriate because that's not what the word vatchachesh means. Vatishaker would mean she lied, not vatchachesh. And it also says that she denied it. Ki Yirmiyahu, she was afraid. What was she afraid of? What was the problem? And finally, what's the point of this whole story? So, first, the Ramban makes a valuable distinction, which is there's a difference between laughter that issues from the mouth and laughter, as it were, which is not expressed. There's expressed laughter and just internal laughter. We use the same phrase, but it really doesn't mean the same thing. And he says expressed laughter is an expression of joy. And that's what Avraham had an experience. And that's exactly what the verse says. It says, Vayipol Avraham upon Yitzchak. Avraham fell on his face and he laughed. Whereas concerning Sara, it says, Bikirba. It says that Sara laughed. We'll get it here. Vatitzchak Sara Bikirba lemor. Sara laughed inside. What's internal? What the Chumash calls tzchok, we call laughter. It's really skepticism or incredulity. Sara was incredulous. She didn't say a word. It says only inside. And this is where it gets a little intense. So the Ramban says that expressed laughter is rejoicing. Internal, quote unquote, laughter is really incredulity. It's like, really? It's skepticism. So this answers perhaps the first question, which is why the different treatment between Avraham and Sara? Well, Avraham laughed with joy. Sara laughed with incredulity. She was really skeptical. So she did not laugh out loud. Now, what was she afraid of? It says, Vatitzchak Sara b'kibar lemor, and it says, Vatchash Sara lemor. Sara denied it. What did she deny? Well, she denied laughing out loud because she didn't laugh out loud. She's not lying. The Malach says, why did Sarah laugh? She says, I didn't laugh, which is true if you understand laughter to be an external expression of the mouth, of the voice. It's a voiced laughter as opposed to a contemplated skepticism. So she's not lying, and she accurately says, I didn't laugh. Now, we may have a breakdown in communication using similar terms, but we go a little deeper. What was she afraid of? Because it says that she denied it because she was afraid. What was she afraid of? She didn't want to hurt Avram's feelings. She had respect, which is also yirah. Sometimes yirah means fear, and sometimes it means reverence. She had reverence for Avram, and she didn't want to, quote unquote, throw him under the bus as a result of this, by articulating her skepticism about whether they were capable. She's 90 years old. He's 100 years old. Come on. Is this really going to happen? What's the point of this discussion? Well, we may have doubts. We may have doubts about things that we hear that sound incredible. They're good, perhaps, but they're incredible. And just because we have doubts, it doesn't mean they're not true. The Malach, according to Rav David Tvi Hoffman, what the Malach was doing was revealing to Sara that he knew something which no human being could understand. No human being knew her unexpressed reservations. And so he, by saying, why'd you laugh? He's saying, I'm onto you. And by saying, I'm onto you, she says, whoa, this man is not a man at all. This man is an agent of Hashem, which is what a malach is, which is what an angel is. An angel is an agent of God. And this verified for her the prophecy. And the point of this is that sometimes we do have reservations. Sometimes we do have doubts. In fact, Yirmiyahu talks about how Rachel Imenu is crying about her children. And Yirmiyahu the Navi says, Min koli kolech mi bechi. Stop crying. And stop tearing. Why? Ki yesh sachar lefulasech. V'shavu, continuing, v'shavu banim l'gvulam. Your children will come back as a result of your efforts, as a result of your, the Medrash goes into what this is all about. But the bottom line is that Rachel merits her children returning. And I just want to say, Monday night, my wife and I were traveling to a wedding, and we passed by the area of Rachel's tomb, of Kever Racha, and there was a long line, because it was the day of her yortzeit. It was the anniversary of her death, which was Yud Aleph Cheshvan, the 11th of Cheshvan, and people were lined up to go to her grave, and her children were returning. And it overwhelmed me that I was watching the fulfillment of a prophecy right then and there. And then I went to the wedding. And the wedding, we sang, Od Yishama B'Orei Yehuda U'Chutzos Yerushalayim. Again, another prophecy of the ultimate redemption, which is after utter destruction of Jerusalem and of the land of Israel, which became inhospitable for 2,000 years. And the prophet prophesied, and he said, your people, our people, my people, says God, will return. And now trees start producing fruits because my people are coming back. And it says, there will once again be heard in Ba'arei Yehuda v'chutzos Yerushalayim, the cities of Judea and the outsides of Jerusalem, the voice of chasan and kala, kol sason v'kol simcha, the voice of rejoicing, the voice of happiness, kol chasan v'kol kala, kol mitzalas chasanim mechupasam unarim b'mishtein ginasam, the voice of the sound of reverie at a wedding. This was a time where people thought the Jewish people were over. They were dead. And guess what? They're not. Am Yisrael Chai. Shabbat Shalom. Have a good Shabbos.